Welcome to This Explainer. We're here to take complex ideas and really make them crystal clear. Today, we're stepping into the shoes of a researcher turned detective. We're looking at grounded theory, and honestly, it is a truly fascinating process of building the puzzle from the pieces up. So, how do you build a theory when the textbooks have absolutely no answers? Imagine you're investigating an entirely unknown process, something no one has adequately explained before. You can't just borrow an old, ill-fitting theory. You literally have to discover a new one, acting as an investigator, uncovering an unknown process from the ground up. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our quick roadmap. First, unlocking grounded theory. Second, core principles and major schools. Third, the 3 stages of coding. Fourth, theory in action, an example. And finally, avoiding the common pitfalls. All right, starting off with Section 1, Unlocking Grounded Theory, Flipping the Scripts on Research. To understand what makes this approach so uniquely powerful, just think about how it compares to traditional methods. Usually, research works from the top down, right? It's deductive. You take a preconceived theory and you test it against your data. Well, grounded theory flips this entirely on its head. It is a completely inductive, bottom-up approach. You are generating a brand new theory directly from the data itself. Developed back in 1967 by sociologists Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss, grounded theory isn't just a qualitative design that broadly describes a phenomenon. Its ultimate purpose is to generate a new, explanatory theoretical framework derived systematically from field data. The end product? It's not just a descriptive summary. It's a highly useful explanatory model that genuinely fits and works out there in the real world. Which brings us to Section 2. Core Principles and Major Schools. Choosing your path. Since 1967, 3 major schools of thought have really evolved here. We have the classic, or Glacierian approach, which emphasizes maximal openness. This is best if you want the absolute fewest possible preconceptions. Then there's the constructivist approach by Kathy Shermaz, viewing theory as co-constructed between researcher and participant, foregrounding your own positionality. But right in the middle? That's the Straussian approach, which focuses on highly structured coding procedures. For this explainer, we're going to focus specifically on that Straussian method. Why? Well, it's the ideal starting point for novices. The explicit procedural steps provide incredible scaffolding, making it by far the most accessible and teachable framework if you're a beginner. But before we get to those steps, you absolutely have to understand the golden rule of this methodology, the constant comparative method. Unlike other designs where you might say, collect all your data first and then sit down to analyze it, in grounded theory, data collection and analysis happen simultaneously. You are continuously comparing each new piece of data against previously collected and coded data. They are constantly shaping one another in real time. Now let's pop the hood in Section 3, the 3 stages of coding, the detective's engine. Think of this whole process like building a jigsaw puzzle without having the picture on the box. Step 1 is open coding, where you break the data down into small, descriptive labels, kind of like organizing your puzzle pieces by color. Step 2 is axial coding, grouping those codes into connected categories, essentially finding the pieces that connect the edges together. And finally, Step 3 is selective coding. This is where you identify a single core category that integrates everything together, revealing the whole picture. Now, how on earth do you keep track of all this while you're coding? The answer is analytic memos. These are short, dated, informal, written notes that capture your emerging ideas. What's absolutely vital to remember here is that memos aren't just a record of what you found, they are where the actual theorizing takes place. Keeping up a disciplined memo writing habit, that is the secret sauce separating genuine grounded theory from just a basic thematic summary. Okay, let's bring all this to life. Section 4, Theory in Action, an example. Investigating language socialization. Our source material gives us a fantastic real-world example to walk through. Here's the case. Adult immigrant warehouse workers with limited English proficiency who are navigating and improving their workplace English over their first year on the job. The researcher starts out by interviewing 5 recently hired workers, literally mining their interview transcripts for clues. During open coding, the researcher breaks those transcripts down and pulls out labels. Take this exact phrase, asking a trusted coworker quietly. Researchers call this an in vivo code because it captures the raw, exact words of the participant. It's a tiny but highly specific clue. And this brilliantly illustrates where the magic happens. That tiny, raw quote ultimately scales up through the selective coding process to this major core category, graduated risk-taking through a safe practice relationship. This single overarching idea ties all the other categories together. It forms the spine of a brand new explanatory theory about how these specific workers socialize. But wait, how did the researcher actually get from that raw open code to the grand core category? Axial coding. To build that bridge, the researcher used axial coding to map out all the connections. They grouped concepts like safe practice relationships and risk avoidance strategies, systematically identifying the conditions, contexts, and consequences that link them all together. And this builds right into another crucial step: theoretical sampling. Because the researcher noticed this trusted coworker concept emerging from the first interviews, they didn't just grab the next demographically convenient person. No. Like a true detective, they specifically sought out new participants who lacked a trusted coworker. They deliberately hunted for contrasting data to stress test their clues and see if the emerging theory actually held up, which naturally leads to a pivotal, very common question if you're trying to execute your own study. When do you stop collecting data? You're interviewing, coding, memo writing, sampling continuously, but where is the actual finish line? Well, that finish line has a specific name. It's called theoretical saturation. This is the exact point where new data stops adding anything new to your categories or their relationships. When your last few interviews provide zero new insights that change your model, it's the ultimate signal that your theory has finally stabilized. Let's wrap things up with Section 5, Avoiding the Common Pitfalls. Final checklist. I want to make sure you're fully equipped to avoid rookie mistakes, so let's rapid fire through these. First, do not treat this as just thematic analysis with extra steps. You must have an explanatory core category. Second, never sample all your participants up front. Recruiting a full sample before any coding begins completely defeats the whole purpose of the method. Next, do not skip your memo writing, or you'll lose the actual theorizing process. And finally, do not declare saturation too early just because a deadline is creeping up on you. Ultimately, this methodology requires a really careful balancing act. Grounded theory has massive strengths. It demands immense analytic rigor and produces a highly relevant local theory perfectly tailored to specific, under-researched populations. However, the limitations are real. It is incredibly time-consuming, it requires high-level abstract thinking, which can be super challenging, and there's always a risk of researcher bias when you're deciding which categories matter most. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What invisible process in your field needs a new theory? Now that you have the tools to build a puzzle from the pieces up, what grounded theory will you uncover? Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring.